This is Greenland. It's the largest island in the world, but for decades it was overlooked. A seemingly irrelevant, remote, frozen wasteland owned by Denmark. But since Trump came to office, he's been obsessed with trying to take it, even floating the idea of buying it outright. Up until now, those attempts haven't exactly worked out. This time, however, things are looking very different. A couple of years ago, the idea of forcibly seizing territory from a NATO ally would have been totally unthinkable. But with the US invading Venezuela, detaining its president, and facing little more than diplomatic outrage in response, it's become abundantly clear that those old rules don't seem to apply anymore. And Trump is clearly punch-drunk on the idea of expanding America's reach. If he were to decide to take the island by force, it doesn't seem like anybody could stop him, something which looks more and more likely by the day. Trump himself claimed the US needs Greenland, and even joked about plans to make Greenland great again. Yet the real reasons for his obsession with the island are far more abrupt. Greenland's location is unique, sitting almost halfway between North America and Europe, and within touching distance of some of the most strategic waters in the world. But the thing is, the US already has military bases here. And if they wanted more, they could probably just ask Denmark and be allowed. Trump's interest comes from something else. Beneath its icy surface lies an abundance of rare earth minerals and potentially some of the largest oil deposits in the world. With an estimated value of upwards of $4 trillion, around 20% of the entire past production of the United States, geographic, military, and economic potential have transformed this icy island into one of the biggest geopolitical flashpoints of the last decade. But it's not just the US who have noticed this. It's Russia and China too. In the last few years, their presence in the Arctic has exploded. Both have invested billions in the region, from an Arctic Silk Road project to even bidding on vital infrastructure in Greenland itself. As this threat grows, the US is getting increasingly desperate and increasingly unpredictable, which raises a deeper question. What is it about Greenland that made it so valuable? And why is the US willing to risk so much to secure it? To understand this relationship, we first need to go back in time. Believe it or not, this isn't the first time the USA has tried to buy Greenland. You see, Greenland is owned by Denmark, but in World War II, they were invaded by Nazi Germany. And suddenly, the island in the United States was at risk. Before this, there had been plans to buy Greenland and Iceland. But here is where they first entered the scene, being granted the right to protect the island against non-US powers and even set up radio stations and military posts. And when the war ended, the United States decided that they quite liked having a foothold in Greenland. And so they made an offer to Denmark, $100 million in gold, worth around $1.6 billion in today's money. But to the US's surprise, they were told no. Instead, what they could do was keep a military presence here and essentially keep protecting the island from a new threat, the Soviet Union. And so, in 1953, they set up this airbase here in northern Greenland with around 10,000 US personnel. And they didn't stop there, setting up many more across the island, marking the northernmost outpost for the American military. It's easy to see why. Because of the curvature of the Earth, these positions were sometimes just 3. These were 0 miles from Moscow and were crucial for providing a line of defense and radar against the Soviet Union, and also served as the perfect spot to launch high-altitude reconnaissance missions into enemy territory. It seemed like the US would keep expanding its presence on the island. But then the Cold War ended, and in the 90s, American interest kind of faded. Equipment was abandoned, and even whole towns were sold for as little as $1. It seemed like this sparsely populated island would slowly fade away again. But that has all changed. After patrolling Greenland's coastal waters, researchers from the US Geological Society made an enormous discovery. Back in 2008, they estimated Greenland could hold over 52 billion barrels of oil. To put that into perspective, in 2023, the United States has proven reserves of 47 billion barrels. If these estimates are correct, Greenland has the potential to double the United States reserves. And even if those calculations are off, it's still incredibly valuable. Oil is the black gold which makes the world go round, and it's at the center of nearly every aspect of daily life, providing the primary energy source for transportation, manufacturing, and other essential activities. But most of global oil production is dominated by a few key players. But they don't always see eye to eye with the United States. And since the 2010s, American oil production has exploded in an effort to protect national security. It's estimated that 13% of the undiscovered oil and 30% of the gas worldwide is in the Arctic, along with a host of other resources. As a result, Arctic nations, including the US, have become very interested into tapping into these resources to facilitate economic growth, generate revenue, and protect economic interests. The retreat of sea ice and glacial melt is making these resources more and more accessible, and Greenland serves as the perfect space to take advantage of this. But there is a problem. Greenland doesn't want to extract the oil. In July 2021, they banned all new oil and gas exploration, citing environmental concerns and high extraction costs as the main reason for the ban, stating the price of oil extraction is just too high. But if we know one thing about Trump, is that he doesn't really believe in climate change. And he's often called it at times a hoax and promotes mantras like drill baby drill. So it seems that Greenland's value is far more than just strategic. But believe it or not, ice levels in the Arctic have been receding, and that is changing the way we view the area. You see, most of our planet is covered in water, but not up here in Greenland. This ocean has always been frozen and inaccessible to anyone who wants to cross it by boat, apart from under very specific circumstances. But as more carbon has entered the air, more and more heat is being trapped in the Earth. And it's been heating the globe just by a few degrees, but by enough to make some significant changes, reducing the level of ice every single year. The Arctic Ocean specifically is heating 4 times faster than anywhere else on the planet, and it is completely changing the way the geopolitical game is being played. Melting ice is uncovering new shipping lanes like the Northwest Passage. These Arctic routes are dramatically shorter than traditional ones, and right in the heart of almost all of these routes is Greenland placed directly to take advantage of this. For example, a journey from Asia to Europe through the Arctic could cut weeks off global shipping times compared to routes through the Suez or Panama canals. These savings in time and fuel could revolutionize global trade and tilt economic power towards the countries who control the seas, meaning any country who controls them controls the world's supply of goods, of which 80% travels by sea. And in just the last 10 years alone, the number of ships passing through the Arctic has already increased by 30%, a number which will only get bigger. But unfortunately for the United States, they are not the only player making moves in the Arctic. And this is part of the reason why Trump has labeled Greenland as critical for the future of the United States' security. In recent years, Russia has been rapidly militarizing its Arctic frontier, building dozens of military bases along its northern coastline. They've even gone as far as planting a flag under the North Pole to stake their claim over the Arctic territory. And even China, a nation not close to the Arctic, has stepped up its presence in the area and even made billions of dollars of investments in Greenland itself. And even before Trump made these bold claims, the U.S. had begun to respond, reopening the U.S. consulate in Nuuk in 2020, for the first time since 1953, and committing $4 billion to upgrade the Thule Air Base, improving things like runways, and even the local transport. And to Donald Trump, in his second term in presidency, the U.S. national security seems to be high on his agenda, or perhaps more importantly, marking America's sphere of influence. He has made remarks about Canada joining the United States along with the Panama Canal, and even renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. But his obsession with Greenland seemed more concrete, having now been a theme of both of his terms. This leaves the question, how can he buy it? And how much would it actually cost? Now, Greenland's strategic might is all well and good, and it has an incredibly valuable piece of land, but there's a problem in Trump's plan. Currently, it belongs to Denmark, and they have said many times that it's not for sale. In fact, they've also just invested another $1.5 billion to boost the island's defense. For most presidents, that fact alone would put the possibility of its acquisition firmly out of the question. After all, invading another NATO member has traditionally been viewed as an absolute red line. But in today's world, that assumption is starting to look far less certain. In fact, the White House press secretary herself refused to rule anything out, saying that all options remain on the table when asked about the issue. The truth is that if the U.S. were to go all out on an invasion and take the land by force, there isn't anybody who would be able to stop them. With that being said, this is far more likely a negotiating tactic, an attempt to pressure Denmark into coming to the table rather than a genuine plan for war. But even if Denmark itself were willing to sell, how would they even be able to come up with a price? Modern examples of countries trading land are pretty rare these days. But there was an example somewhat similar back in 2017 where Egypt transferred sovereignty over Tiran and Sanafir Islands to Saudi Arabia in exchange for a $22 billion aid package. And while putting a precise estimate on the value of Greenland is like guessing the length of string, some estimates have been closer to $2 trillion, which even for America is a lot of money, especially for an incoming administration which wants to reduce its national debt and cut taxes. While it is technically independent, both Denmark and Greenland know that if the U.S. comes knocking, then there's not much that really can be done. And even 50 years ago, Greenland's fate seemed tied to American power. And as of 2009, it's had the recognized right to become fully independent if it chooses. It seems then that this could be the chosen path to convince the people of Greenland to join the United States, rather than using economic or military might. While many laughed off Trump's comments about Greenland in the first term about being just another one of his tweets, it seemed like this time there is real weight behind it. But even if America does not purchase the land as ice continues to melt, its value and spot in the world of geopolitics is only going to rise.